Chapter 1. The First Journey. Once upon a time, in a small village, there lived an old couple with their only son, Martin. Life was hard for them. The old man had worked all his life. When his time came, he lay down in his bed and died. All he left behind was 200 florins for his wife and his son. After his husband's death, the old woman sat in silence. She counted the coins and sighed. With so little money, life would not be easy. Still, she saved the coins as best as she could for a rainy day. But the rain came much sooner than she had hoped. There was hardly any food left in the house, and hunger began to knock at their door. With a heavy heart, she took 100 florins and handed them to Martin. "Take this and go to the town," she said. "Buy enough food to last us for a year." Martin set off along the dusty road. He felt both fear and hope in his heart. The money was all they had. When Martin reached the town, the busy sounds of the market filled his ears. He passed many stalls and crowded streets until he came upon a scene that made him stop in his tracks. At the corner of the meat market, a loud clatter disturbed the air. A group of butchers had caught a large staghound. The poor dog was tied to a post. The butchers beat the dog while angry shouts filled the space. The sight made Martin's heart ache. He could not understand why anyone would hurt an innocent animal. "Friends," Martin called out softly as he moved closer, "why do you beat him so cruelly?" The butchers laughed and answered, "He ate a freshly killed pig. He deserves it." But Martin's voice stayed gentle. "Please, stop. I will take him off your hands if you sell him to me." The butchers sneered. "He is worth at least 100 florins." Martin's eyes grew wide with shock. 100 florins was all the money his mother had given him. Still, he could not bear to see the poor animal suffer. With trembling hands, he handed over the coins. The dog was freed from his bonds. Martin learned that his new friend was called Shurka. He patted the dog gently, and they left the noisy market together. When Martin returned home with Shurka, his mother frowned. "What have you done?" she cried in anger. Instead of food, he had brought home a dog. "We have little to eat, and you spend our last money on an animal," she scolded. Her harsh words pierced Martin's heart. He felt ashamed and confused. The next day, Martin had no time to rest. His mother gave him the remaining 100 florins. "Go back to town and buy some provisions," she ordered. "Our meals have vanished, and I have only a small bannock left." With a heavy sigh, Martin took the money and began his journey again. On his way back to town, Martin met a strange sight. A rough peasant was dragging a small cat by a string tied around its neck. The cat looked weak and sad. "Stop!" Martin shouted, running to the peasant. "Why do you hurt that poor creature?" The peasant grunted. "The cat killed my goose. I plan to drown him." Martin's heart pounded as he knelt beside the frightened animal. "Please do not drown it. I will buy the cat from you, he pleaded. The peasant grinned evilly. I will sell it for 100 florins. Martin's eyes filled with disbelief. Once again, his entire money was claimed by an animal. Still, his kind heart would not let him ignore its pain. He pulled out the coins and handed them over. The cat, with its soft fur and sad eyes, was named Waska. Martin returned home once more, carrying his two new companions, Shurka the dog and Waska the cat. His mother's anger was sharp and biting. You bring back nothing but useless creatures, she shouted. How can we live on dreams when we need food to survive? Her voice made Martin's heart sink even lower. Feeling lost and hurt by his mother's words, Martin decided to leave his home. He could see that his kind acts had only brought trouble. With Shurka by his side and Waska quietly following, Martin took one last look at the small house and set out for the unknown. In that moment, the morning air felt crisp, with a mix of sorrow and hope. Martin walked away from the only home he had ever known. His feet pounded the dusty road as he stepped toward a future that was not yet clear. Deep inside, he held on to a spark of faith. This new beginning, though filled with obstacles, was also a chance to prove his worth and find a better life. Martin's first journey had only just begun. With his loyal friends, he would face many trials ahead. His gentle heart and brave soul shone through even in the darkest times. And so the road unfolded, leading him to strange adventures and promising new encounters. Chapter 2: The Fiery Calling. Martin set out alone once more, leaving behind the life he had known. He walked along dusty roads with his faithful friends, Shurka and Waska, trotting quietly by his side. The sun shone high as he traveled further from his old village. In his heart, he carried both hope and a touch of worry about what lay ahead. Not far into his journey, Martin met a strong, well-dressed peasant on the side of the road. The peasant asked, "Where are you headed, young man?" "I am looking for work as a day laborer," Martin answered in a low, steady voice. The peasant smiled kindly and said, "I have a job for you. I do not pay wages as others do. Instead, you will work for me for 1 full year, and then I will reward you in a special way." Martin, hungry for food and new hope, agreed without hesitation. He thought of his mother and the hard times they had faced. In that moment, the promise of a fresh start filled his heart. For 1 long year, Martin labored under the open skies. He helped in the fields, carried heavy loads, and cleaned the dusty barns. Even when the hot sun beat down on him, he worked without complaint. Day by day, Martin proved his determination and earned the quiet respect of his master. His loyal friends, Shurka and Waska, walked by his side, offering silent support as he toiled from dawn until dusk. When the year at last ended, the peasant led Martin to an old barn. Inside, amid the faint smell of hay and earth, lay 2 large sacks. The peasant said, "You have worked hard for me. Now, you may take either sack as your reward. One sack is filled with bright, shining silver coins. The other is filled with ordinary sand. Martin looked at the two sacks carefully. The silver shone, tempting him with the promise of wealth. But the sack of sand seemed plain and unworthy at first glance. Martin paused and thought about the hardships he and his mother had endured. Soon, a new hope stirred within him, a feeling that there was a secret in the simple sand that might help him more than silver ever could. With a quiet resolve, Martin chose the sack of sand. He picked it up, feeling the weight of its mystery on his back, and left the barn with a determined step. The silver, though dazzling, did not call to him as strongly as the humble sack did. Martin believed that life was more than mere glittering riches. Days turned into weeks as Martin walked further into the countryside. The path led him past green meadows and quiet streams, and eventually he found himself before a vast, gloomy wood. The trees were tall, their leaves whispering secrets with every breeze. The ground was soft with fallen leaves, and the air smelled of earth and rain. In the heart of the wood, Martin came upon a small clearing. In the center of the clearing, a fierce fire burned. The flames leaped and crackled as they danced wildly over a small patch of ground. In the midst of the fiery blaze, Martin saw a figure he could hardly believe. A lady, glowing with a strange beauty that shone like a jewel among the flames. Her hair fell softly around her face, and her eyes twinkled with warmth, even in the harsh light of the fire. As Martin stepped closer, the lady spoke in a soft yet urgent tone. Martin, if you wish to find true happiness, please save my life. Use the sand from your sack to put out this fire. Her words filled the air with hope and a hint of mystery. Though Martin felt a tremor of fear, he also felt a strong desire to help. He understood that sometimes a small act of kindness could lead to great changes. Without a second thought, Martin reached for his sack of sand. He poured the grains over the flames. The sand fell like a cool shower, and almost instantly, the raging fire began to die down. Smoke curled softly into the sky as the fire was quenched, leaving the clearing calm and still. At that very moment, something extraordinary happened. The beautiful lady who had called for help began to change. Her form shifted before Martin's very eyes. The delicate, fiery figure wavered like a reflection in a pond until, slowly, she turned into a long, shining serpent. Martin's heart pounded. He had never seen such magic before. The serpent slid silently across the ground and coiled itself around Martin's neck. In a whisper that trembled like a soft breeze, it spoke. Do not fear, dear Martin. I love you and will follow you wherever you go. Then, as if a spell was broken, the serpent uncoiled and transformed back into the radiant lady. Standing in the quiet aftermath of the extinguished fire, she looked into Martin's eyes with kindness. I am here to guide you, she said gently. Come with me. I will lead you to a hidden kingdom beneath the earth, a place of wonder. In that kingdom, a great reward awaits you. But be warned, the treasures of gold and silver are not for you to keep. Instead, ask for the ring on the king's little finger. This ring holds a magic power. With a simple toss from one hand to the other, 12 strong young men will appear to serve you in a single night. Martin felt a mix of fear and hope. The promise of magic and a secret power ignited a spark in his heart. With the lady's guidance and his loyal friends by his side, he knew his journey was only just beginning. Together, they left the clearing and ventured deeper into the wood. The trees grew thicker and shadows lengthened, but Martin's path was lit by the warm light of his new companion. Every step was filled with a sense of wonder and anticipation of the magic that lay ahead. At length, they reached a great rock rising in the middle of the road. The rock was massive and old. The lady pointed to a small opening at its base. This narrow path will lead you deeper into the kingdom below, she said softly. Martin looked at the opening. Though it was small, he sensed that it held the promise of new adventures. His heart beat fast with both hope and a bit of fear. With Shurka and Waska at his side, he took a deep breath and stepped into the dark passage. In that quiet moment, the world outside fell away. Martin knew that the magic of his journey had only just begun. The mystery of the sand, the fire, and the lady's soft words filled him with a bold desire to see what lay ahead. And so, with courage and a spark of belief, he moved forward into the unknown depths, ready to uncover the secrets that awaited him in the hidden kingdom beneath the earth. Chapter 3. The Secret Kingdom. Martin stepped into the dark passage with his heart beating fast. The narrow corridor was cool and quiet. Every step sounded soft against the ground. His faithful friends, Shurka and Waska, followed him close. Though the darkness felt deep and unknown, Martin held on to the spark of hope that had guided him so far. After a while, the path began to widen. The cool darkness slowly faded as a gentle light appeared. Martin blinked in surprise. He was coming out into a large, open field. Overhead, a bright blue sky stretched out, full of promise and warmth. The air was fresh and soft, unlike the heavy silence of the tunnel. Martin felt as if he had entered another world. In the middle of the open field stood a magnificent palace. The castle rose proudly with tall, shining walls. Its stones were smooth and strong. A golden roof glimmered under the bright sun. The windows sparkled like tiny stars. Martin's eyes widened in wonder, for he had never seen such beauty before. The palace looked like it was made of magic. The lady who had saved him from the fire walked beside him. Her eyes shone like gentle flames. "This is my father's palace," she explained in a kind and soft voice. "I live in my father's kingdom here in the underworld." Her words made Martin smile, even though he still found the whole scene hard to believe. Beside him, Shurka wagged his tail, and Waska walked with quiet dignity. They began to walk slowly along a paved path that led right to the palace gates. The path was lined with trees whose branches bowed low with fruit. The fruits were bright and looked like small, golden apples. Birds chirped happily from the trees, and the air filled with a sweet, gentle song. Every sound reminded Martin that he was in a place of wonder and mystery. At last, they reached a large, heavy door. The door was carved with strange symbols, and it opened with a soft creak as they pushed it. Inside, the palace was filled with light. Rich colors adorned every wall. Long corridors stretched out on both sides, and the floors shone with the glow of polished stone. Soft music could be heard in the distance, adding to the magic of the place. A kind and gentle voice greeted them. "Welcome, dear guest," said a man who stepped forward from behind a large doorway. He wore a robe of deep blue, and his smile was warm. "I am the king of this underworld. I have waited many years for this day." The king's eyes gleamed with kindness and wisdom. His voice was calm, and each word was easy to understand. The king's daughter, the very lady who had led Martin here, stepped forward and curtsied gracefully. Her face was gentle and full of joy. "My father," she said softly, "I am happy to see you, and so is our honored guest." The king nodded and embraced his daughter. He then turned to Martin, his expression full of gratitude. "Brave Martin," he said, "you saved my daughter when she was in danger. You showed a kind heart by helping her in her time of need." The king then offered Martin a choice. Before him were many treasures, chests filled with glittering coins, piles of shining gems, and fine fabrics that glowed in the soft light. Yet Martin remembered the words of his gentle guide. The king explained, "I can give you riches as great as these. But if you wish, you may have something more special." Martin's eyes sparkled with curiosity as the king continued, "On my little finger, I wear a small ring of great magic. This ring is the secret to a power that can bring forth 12 strong young men to help you whenever you need. They will do your bidding in one night if you use the ring in the proper way." Martin thought carefully. The glittering treasures were tempting, but he felt that the magic ring would serve him better on his journey. With a humble voice, he said, "I wish for the magic ring, Your Majesty. It is not wealth, but wisdom and power that I value most." The king smiled at Martin's simple and honest choice. He reached out and took off the ring from his little finger. The ring was delicate, shining softly with an inner light. He placed it gently in Martin's hand and said, "Take this ring and guard it with all your heart. But promise me one thing. Do not ever tell anyone of its magic, or misfortune will come to you." Martin listened carefully and promised. The magic ring felt warm and reassuring on his hand. At that moment, Martin felt as if his life had truly changed. His journey, with all its hardships and strange wonders, had led him to a place where magic was real. For a time, the king and his daughter spent moments with Martin. They showed him the beautiful halls of the palace, the gardens filled with colorful flowers, and the art that decorated the corridors. Everywhere, Martin saw signs of hard work, kindness, and the care that the royal family put into creating this place of wonder, his heart filled with gratitude and hope. Before long, the king prepared a feast to celebrate Martin's bravery. Food and music filled the grand hall as they sat around a long table. Martin shared simple meals with the king's family. The voices were gentle, and laughter echoed softly around him. Though he had come from a simple life, Martin felt welcome and important in this enchanted place. As the evening came, the king reminded Martin once more about the magic ring and its power. Martin tucked the ring safely into his pocket, knowing that it would help him when times grew dark and hard. In that moment, under the light of the palace chandeliers, Martin promised silently that he would use the ring and his newfound wisdom only for good. The night ended with a gentle lull of music, and Martin felt that his life was now filled with hope and new promise. The wonder of the palace and the kindness of the king and his daughter gave him strength. As he lay to rest that night, Martin dreamed of distant lands and future adventures. He knew that his journey was far from over, and that the magic inside the ring and within his own heart would light his way in the days to come. Chapter 4: The Royal Challenge. After his magical adventure in the Secret Kingdom, Martin returned to his old home. With the magic ring safely kept, he and his mother enjoyed peaceful days. Life was calm, and hope filled the little house. Yet deep in his heart, Martin began to dream of a grand change. He wished to marry a princess, a royal bride who would light up his simple world. One morning, Martin told his mother, "I want to marry a great lady. I want to have a princess for my wife." His eyes shone with hope as he spoke, but his mother was filled with worry. "Why do you want a princess?" she asked. "You're kind and good, but a princess is too grand for us." Still, Martin was determined. He believed that with the magic ring and his honest heart, he could win the hand of a royal. Unable to change his mind, Martin asked his mother to visit the royal palace. "Mother, please go to the king's court," he said. "Ask the king to give his daughter to me in marriage." The old woman was scared. She had never been to such a grand place. However, she also loved her son deeply. With a heavy heart and trembling legs, she agreed. She packed a small bag and set out for the palace. On her journey, the old woman climbed many stairs and passed many guards. The grand steps of the palace were tall and lined with elegant courtiers. They wore bright clothes and looked down at her with surprise. "Stop," they said. "The steps are not for you." But the old woman would not be stopped. She climbed each step slowly, her voice growing louder with every word. She declared to anyone who would listen, "I have come to ask for my son's marriage to the king's daughter." Her determined shouts reached the palace doors, and soon the king himself stepped out onto a balcony to see what was happening. The king was a stern man. He watched as the small figure of the old woman ascended the stairs. With great care, she was brought inside the palace. At last, she found herself standing in a grand hall with tall, gleaming columns. The room was filled with soft light and quiet murmurs from the gathered courtiers. The king asked in a deep and steady voice, "What is it that you want, old woman?" With all the courage she could muster, she replied, "I have come to ask that my son, Martin, be given your daughter in marriage. He is a brave and good young man. There is nothing he cannot do." Her words shook with both determination and fear. The king looked at her for a long time. His face became stern and his eyes twinkled with a secret idea. Finally, he said, "If your son is as capable as you claim, let him prove it." I set a challenge for him. The king paused, and his voice rang out clearly. "Martin must build a magnificent castle right across my palace windows in just 24 hours. The castle must have a bridge made of crystal that connects it to my palace. At each side of this bridge, there must be trees bearing golden and silver apples, with birds of paradise singing among the branches. And next to the bridge, there must be a church with 5 golden cupolas, whose bells ring sweetly." A murmur ran through the hall. The courtiers laughed and whispered that it was a foolish task. The king's challenge was steep. The old woman trembled with fear. She cried softly, "Is that really your command, O king?" The king answered sharply, "Yes, old woman. Tell your son, if he can complete this task, he may have my daughter in marriage. But if he fails, both you and he shall suffer a most embarrassing punishment." News of the king's challenge spread quickly. Martin learned what had happened and felt a mix of shock and calm determination. Though his heart ached from his mother's bold actions, he believed in the magic ring. Martin knew that the ring held great power and had already helped him in his past. That very evening, under a sky streaked with twilight, Martin went out to his humble yard. He held the magic ring in his hand. With a deep breath, he tossed the ring from one hand to the other. Instantly, as the magic promised, 12 young men appeared. They were strong, swift, and ready to serve. Martin explained the king's challenge to them in simple words. Build the castle, the crystal bridge, the trees full of golden and silver apples with birds on their branches, and the church with 5 golden cupolas. He said. The 12 youths nodded, and without wasting a moment, they set off to work. As dawn approached, the 12 young men worked quickly. They carved stone and built walls. They placed a shining crystal bridge between the 2 palaces. They planted trees on both sides, and soon the trees bore apples that gleamed in the morning light. Tiny birds, as beautiful as legends, sang on the branches. With steady hands and strong hearts, the 12 constructed a small but magnificent church, complete with 5 golden cupolas. The bells of the church rang in a clear, sweet tone that floated over the land. When the clock struck the early hours of the next morning, the king awoke and looked out of his window. To his great surprise, he saw a beautiful castle standing directly opposite his palace. The crystal bridge glittered in the sunlight, and the trees in church completed the lovely scene. The king's stern face softened with amazement. Although he had intended to humiliate Martin, the challenge had been met with brilliance. The palace courtiers gathered, all whispering and pointing at the stunning work. The king's eyes shone with a mix of pride and disbelief. He declared to all in his grand hall, "Martin, you have done the impossible. You have built a magnificent castle and met my challenge. My daughter shall be yours in marriage." The old woman, who had braved the palace and spoken her request, stood silently. Her heart pounded with fear and regret. She now realized that her bold request had brought her into a difficult and dangerous situation. Yet, Martin's steady nature and the wonder of the magic ring had turned her peril into a victory. Martin thanked the 12 young men with all his heart. He knew that his kind spirit and hard work, guided by magic and courage, had won him the challenge. As the new day dawned bright over the royal court, the castle stood as proof of his determination and the power of magic that dwelt in his ring. Thus, the king's challenge came to an end. With the grand castle as a symbol of his success, Martin looked forward to a new future, one that promised both challenge and great reward. Chapter 5: The Test of Betrayal and Forgiveness. Life in the castle turned calm once more after the wedding. Martin and his princess were married. At first, everything looked bright and happy. The new castle, the crystal bridge, and the sweet sound of church bells made the place special. Martin's heart was full of hope, and he trusted that his future would be filled with peace. But the princess soon grew unhappy. Deep inside, she felt that she was born for a higher life. She did not like that she now lived with a poor man. She thought her royal birth made her better than Martin. Slowly, her heart filled with jealousy. The princess wished to have all the wealth and power by herself and did not want to share any magic with Martin. She began to plan in secret. One evening, with a sly smile, the princess came close to Martin when he was happy and relaxed. She offered him a sweet potion, saying, "Drink this, my dear. It will make you feel even more joy." Martin, trusting and kind, took the potion and drank it. Soon the potion worked its magic. His eyes grew heavy, and he fell into a deep sleep on the soft cushions of their chamber. While Martin slept soundly, the princess crept over to his bedside. She saw the magic ring resting on his finger. This ring had given Martin power before. She knew its secret. It could call upon 12 strong young men who would do anything Martin asked. The princess felt that with this ring, she would have control over all that lay in the castle. Carefully, she took the ring from Martin's finger. With trembling hands, she tossed the ring from one hand to the other. As the magic ring spun in the air, the 12 young men appeared. But this time, their eyes shone with a strange light as they listened to her orders. The princess commanded them in a firm voice. Take away the grand castle, the shining bridge, the beautiful trees, and the church with the golden cupolas. Bring back only the simple hut where Martin and I once lived. When the sun rose the next morning, a great surprise awaited the royal court. The king looked out of his palace window and could not believe his eyes. In place of the magnificent castle stood a small, humble hut. The crystal bridge had vanished. The trees with golden and silver apples were gone. Even the melodious chime of the church bells was silent. The whole palace was in disarray. The king was very angry. He sent for Martin to come before him and explain what had happened. Still under the spell of the potion, and with his heart heavy from betrayal, Martin could only stare at the king in silence. His voice would not come out. The king did not wait long. He accused Martin of witchcraft and deceit. In a fit of anger, he ordered that Martin be imprisoned in a tall stone tower with no food or drink. Martin was taken away to the tower, where cold walls and lonely nights soon became his only companions. Inside the high stone tower, Martin felt fear and deep sadness. His heart ached with the weight of both hunger and loneliness. It had been his magic ring that had given him hope and helped him create wonders. Now, it was gone. The betrayal by his princess stung deeply. Outside the tower, two loyal friends did not forget Martin's kindness. Shurka, the brave dog, and Waska, the clever cat, remembered how Martin had saved their lives long ago. They could not bear to see him suffer alone. Determined to help, they left their safe place and hurried to find food and a way to save Martin. In the busy town, Shurka and Waska met a kindly baker. As fate would have it, the baker carried a tray full of warm, soft rolls. At that moment, Shurka dashed quickly between the baker's legs. The baker stumbled, and the tray fell, scattering the delicious rolls on the ground. While the baker was busy picking up the tray and grumbling, Waska quickly gathered the rolls. Together, they ran back toward the tower. When Waska reached the grated window of Martin's tower, she called out softly, "Master, are you still alive?" Her voice was full of care and hope. Hearing her call, Martin's weakened voice replied, "I am here. I have not eaten for many days." With gentle purrs and joyful barks, Shurka and Waska shared the rolls with Martin. The little feast lifted his spirit for a short while. It reminded him that even in the darkest times, true friends would never leave his side. But they knew that food was only a small comfort. The real power lay in the magic ring, and now it was in the hands of the unkind princess. Shurka and Waska made a bold decision. They would go on a long journey to retrieve the magic ring and bring it back to Martin. They left the tower with heavy hearts but determined steps. Their journey led them to a distant kingdom. Along the way, They met a clever little mouse. This mouse was known as the king of the mice. When Waska told the mouse of Martin's suffering and of the magic ring held by the princess, the mouse agreed to help. The tiny mouse said, I have seen the princess keep the ring close. At night, when she sleeps, I will sneak into her chamber and take it back for you. When night fell in the distant kingdom, the mouse crept silently into the princess's bedchamber. With small, careful steps, he went to the bedside where the princess slept. He watched until she began to snore softly. Then the mouse scurried close, grabbed the shining ring, and carried it away in his tiny paws. Back in the tower, Shurka and Waska waited with hope. Soon the mouse arrived, the magic ring held high. With great care, he returned the ring to the faithful cat and dog. They quickly hurried back to the tower to give it to Martin. When the ring touched Martin's hand, a warm glow filled him again. Gently, he tossed the ring from one hand to the other. In an instant, the 12 young men reappeared. They looked strong and ready. Martin spoke with a calm and firm voice. Build my castle again, just as it was before. Let everything be restored to its former wonder. The 12 young men quickly obeyed. They rebuilt the grand castle, the shining crystal bridge, the beautiful fruit trees, and the church with its golden cupolas. All was made as it once had been. The king soon learned of the events and called for Martin to be brought before him. Martin, however, kept silent, his eyes filled with a quiet sorrow. In that moment, Martin made a choice. Though he had been hurt deeply by the princess's betrayal, he chose to forgive her. He spoke softly to the king, saying, I forgive my wife, for holding anger will only darken my heart further. His words were gentle and honest. The king, moved by Martin's kindness and strength, declared that Martin should live in peace. The princess was taken away, and Martin's old mother returned to live with him. The grand castle stood as a symbol of hope and resilience. Shurka and Waska remained ever faithful at his side, and Martin kept the magic ring safe always. And so, through trials of betrayal and the test of true friendship, Martin's life was restored. He learned that true power comes from forgiveness, love, and loyalty. In the end, even in the face of deep sorrow, a kind heart can mend the deepest wounds, bringing light back into the darkest night.